In this video, you're going to learn a new data type, strings. So a string is a sequence of characters which you place inside single quotes or double quotes. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So let's define a variable job and set it to web developer. So this is a string because it is a sequence of characters and we place them inside single quotes. Let's define another one. This is another string, okay? But instead of single quotes, you can choose to have double quotes. Okay. So now let's define another string and call it greeting. And let's set it to hello, glad to see you. So we've got a string and it's inside single quotes, but we're going to get an error because of this single quote inside our string. So if you've got a single quote inside a string made with single quotes, then you would need to escape that single quote using a backslash like that. And now you're not going to get an error. All right, so that's how you escape the normal process and treat any quotation marks, okay, as a punctuation mark, if you like. All right, now let's have a look at some special characters. So you might want to have a new line inside your string. Okay. So for instance, let's have a new value or new variable quote, and let's say this is a new line. So if you print this string in your console, this is what you get. But let's say that we want a new line to start right there. So between is and a, we're going to add a special character, and that's going to be \n, and this will give us a new line. Now let's say that you want to have a tab instead of a new line. So let's set our quote variable to a new value saying here is a tab, and you want the tab to appear right there. So just before a, we're going to have a tab. So to do that, we're going to have again a backslash, but this time we're going to have T for tab. Let's try. Oh, you've got a tab right there. All right, so now let's move to something else. Let's have a quick look at concatenation. So concatenation will allow you to concatenate two strings. So for instance, let's define a couple of strings, first name and last name. So now you want to concatenate these strings and store them inside a new variable called full name. So to concatenate strings, you can just take the string and add it like you do with numbers to the other string, like that. So now if we print full name, this is what you're going to get. Now let's say that we want a space between Bill and Gates. So just before the last name, we're going to add another string. And we're going to have a space inside it. So now let's try and see. Okay, so that looks better. You can even add a dot at the end if you like that. And that looks even better. Okay, now let's have a quick look at some methods and properties that we can use with strings. So again, these are going to be covered in detail in the objects chapter, but for now we're just going to have a quick look for awareness reasons. Okay, so these methods, they're going to work with strings, although strings are primitive, but they inherit these methods from a global objects, or which we'll cover later. It's the string objects, and we're going to cover this objects later. Okay, so let me just write a comment here. So these methods will work with the primitive type, okay, and also with the object type. Okay, will be covered in detail later. So for instance, you can print the length of a string. So let's define a string, call it S, and let's say apple. So you may want to see the length of apple. So to do that, the property to use is called length, and that will give you the length of your string. 5, and that's 5 because we have 5 characters inside apple. Now let's say you want to know the character at position 2. Okay, so you're going to use the character at method. So position 2 will be that one. So that's position 0, position 1, and position 2. We always start with position 0. So let's see what we get. We get letter B. Now let's try something else. You can check the index of a certain letter. So let's say index of letter L. So it's going to be index of, and then you specify which letter you want to see. So letter L is at index 3, because if we start from 0, 1, 2, we end up in the 3rd position for L. And finally, let's have a quick look at the last index of a letter. So let's say that you want to know the last index of P, meaning you want to know the index of the last letter P, because we have 2 letters P there, and you want to have the index of the last one. So to have that, you need to use the last index of method, and then you specify P, and that will give you the index of the last one, okay, which is 2. So 0, 1, 2. So these are only a few methods that which are inherited from the global object string, and we're going to come back to these later in detail.